Here we go.
Good afternoon. My name is Ron Stafford. I'm the head librarian at Northeastern Technical College.
Hey, everybody. My name is Mark Nakamis. I teach English as well as religion here at the college.
And we're going to talk to you today about how to grow your OER initiative on campuses. And this is the photos of our lovely little faces. I'm at the bottom holding the wonderful Virginia Woolf book.
And that's me striking the Heisman pose. That was literally, it might have been a few days before the pandemic hit and we had to go home. And I'm holding my PAL award. PAL stands for Professor of Affordable Learning, which we'll touch upon later in the presentation.
Okay.
A good place to begin talking about our OER initiative here at Northeastern Technical College is to talk about the corridor of shame. And looking at the map here, in case you're curious where NETC is, we're in Cheraw, South Carolina, which is where the star is. A good way to visualize where Cheraw is, everybody knows where Charlotte is and where Myrtle Beach is. And if you were to draw a line between Charlotte and Myrtle Beach, Cheraw would be exactly in the middle.
And I will add real quickly that Cheraw is world famous for being the hometown of Dizzy Gillespie.
Yes. And part of our service area is in the corridor of shame. It's a known area in the state that has been chronically underfunded regarding education, with poor schooling, not just, in this decade or the previous decade, but for generations. These counties here running through South Carolina have for decades and decades and decades not received proper funding for public schooling. So the result of this is that the people in the service area, not just our service area, but throughout the whole corridor, they really don't see the value of education. And by value, I not only mean the monetary significance of getting credentialed, but the importance of it in one's life. Just a quick little illustration. After the pandemic hit, and we were all sent home as everybody else was, and we were trying to figure out how life was going to move forward, I shifted my face-to-face classes to online classes. And I kept virtual office hours via Zoom. And one session of virtual office hours, one of my students jumped into the Zoom office and was asking me some questions, and we're going over some content. And we were outside and he was talking to me through his phone. And I said, hey, jump back and get your laptop, because there's a handout that's going to explain this to you so you can kind of visualize it. And he was like, oh, well, my handout's in the kitchen. So he goes back into his house and he takes his phone and he lays it flat on the table while he's powering up his laptop. And then so I'm looking up at his kitchen ceiling and it's blurry, and then it comes into focus. And I realize that there's a sheet of plywood that's painted white up in his kitchen ceiling. So his family, they had a hole in the ceiling, and to fix it, his dad, I'm guessing, just took a sheet of plywood and, nailed it up there and then painted it white. And they just went, that was that. And that's a really good illustration of the importance of OERs, because if you imagine that student going to his parents and saying, hey, can I have, $500 to buy a couple books? And then his parents would probably say, didn't we just give you $500? And he was supposed to say, yeah, but that was last semester. This is a new semester. I need new books. So for our students, the high cost of textbooks is a real issue. That's just a little illustration there. But back to this slide here, within our three county service area of Chesterfield, Dillon, and Marlborough counties, there's no four-year colleges or universities. Furthermore, NETC, Northeastern, is the only two-year college. So there's really, we're kind of in a desert regarding higher education. There's just not many schools around us. If we expand and we pick up Darlington and Florence counties, which are further to the east, then we pick up Coker as well as Francis Marion University. Those are both four-year colleges. And then we pick up Florence Darlington Technical College. So within, 5 counties, there's only 2 four-year colleges and 2 two-year colleges, which is really, there's not many institutions of higher learning in the area. And because of this, the populace here, it's rare to have a college education. There's not that many parents who've been to college. So when their kids go to college, they don't have a support system at home. They don't have someone to encourage them. They don't, have ready access to books that might be at home for resources as well. And the vast majority of our population here at NETC, they're first-time college students. So they really don't have that needed support system regarding how to get through college. And for way too many of our students, when they hit an obstacle, they have trouble, going around it or going over it. And for too many of our students, when they hit that obstacle, and believe it or not, an obstacle could be not having a textbook. It's often reason for them not to continue their education. So there's, when we talk about the corridor of shame, again, it's just decades and decades that we're just rolling this boulder up the hill, trying to get higher education valued in our service area.
And a lot of times when our students hit that boulder and that barrier, they'll go home and say, well, this didn't work.
And the parents will often say, well, see, I told you so. So they really don't have that positive encouragement. And so now what Ron is going to do, he's going to talk about some data points.
I am, and I pulled these numbers. I went through iPad surveys and iPad information, and we also went to local bookstores' websites. And we kind of figured out that within our 5-county area around us, students typically pay $98 for an English 101 book, about $400 for biology, about $300 for math, about $300 for Spanish, about $300 for criminal justice. They spend about $1,377 for their first semester of books.
And that's just one semester. And I have twin daughters, and one of my daughters is going to College of Charleston. And we popped down for a visit not too long ago, and she had a binder. And I was like, oh, what's that? And she was like, this is my French book. And I was like, well, wait a second, this is a binder, that's not a book. And she said, I know. A lot of the books now, what the textbook publishers are doing is they're not binding the books. They're just taking the pages and 3-hole punching them and shrinking them in plastic. And then what the kids have to do is they have to buy the pages and drop it into a binder. And then here's the thing, the college bookstores don't buy those back. So it's forcing the students semester after semester after semester to pay these crazy high prices for books. And this is the sad thing, when the kids get done with those, since they can't sell them back and they can't find anybody to buy them, they just throw them away. So we're just wasting so many resources. We're just going through trees that are going straight into the landfill. And it's just outrageous what's happened with college textbook publishers. It's just outrageous.
So not only can we save students money, we can save trees.
Yeah, we can actually make it,
Why not?
Do some good.
Okay, and we kind of looked at the iPad data and other public information about different colleges, and we found out roughly Coker spends about $2,000 a semester for books, Florence Darlington $1,246, Francis Marion about $1,157, and if you see Northeastern,
We have that asterisk. What is that asterisk?
that means what, Mark?
That's before we started the OER initiative. So this was several years ago.
So now we calculated it in the middle of the spring semester, and I think our students on average are paying maybe $100 a semester.
Yeah, we're not quite 100%,
We're getting
OER,
there.
but we're getting closer and closer. And a lot of people say, well, gosh, they're not completely 100% OER. And listen, if you can reduce the number of textbooks from 5 or 6 to 1 or 2 per semester, you're really doing a service to your students. So when you start an OER initiative at your school, don't worry about rushing out there and getting 100% in the first semester. It's going to take a few semesters and for it to get traction, and you might never reach 100%. We're hovering a little over 90%. And with that might be as high as we go, which is great because that means that the students might only have to buy 1 book a year.
And for our welding classes and our industry classes, we encourage the instructors to find 1 textbook they can use throughout their course of their classes. It may be a $250 textbook, but if they can use it for 5 classes, that's $50 per class. And if you're starting an OER initiative on campus, we strongly encourage you to start with those low-hanging fruit classes. Start with your gen ed classes. Start with English, history, the ones that there's plenty of things for it. Here at Northeastern, we're having more difficulties because as a technical school, we have nursing, we have welding, we have CAD, and those are very difficult to find OER. So we're working on it, but by starting with the low-hanging general education classes, we've had really good success. And what we want you to take away right now, as far as we've gotten in this talk, is a lot of instructors say, I can't help my students, I can't affect their financial stability. We really can. We have to think about the cost of the textbooks we're buying and how that can really hurt our students. Because we have a lot of single mothers, single fathers, and we really have to think about, can our students afford even a $75 textbook? We might find one that's just as good, if not better, that's a free OER.
Yeah, so there's all these things to think about when you're starting your initiative at your school and starting to move towards OERs.
Okay, let's look at some facts and figures. Everybody thinks nothing has gone up like the cost of medical care and houses. Wrong. Currently, textbook costs has risen more than any other expense.
And I can remember when I was in school, of course, textbooks were...
Did you ride the dinosaurs?
Textbooks were expensive back then, but my daughter who goes to college at Charleston, that textbook she got, which was just pages that were 3-hole punched, was almost $300.
Whoa.
And that was just, I was like, I can't believe this. This is just ridiculous that so much money is just going, oh.
And who gets the money? Does the textbook writers get the money?
That's what a lot of people think about, is that the author of the textbook gets the money, but that's not the case. If you look here on this pie chart, the author income is roughly 11%, which is so sad. So when you move to OERs, you're not hurting the author of a textbook. I mean, it's just 10%. You look at all these other slices of the pie here, the college bookstore personnel, the manufacturing costs, the marketing costs. I mean, it's just slice of the pie, thin, thin, thin. So the authors of these textbooks they're not Stephen King, right? They're not making hundreds of thousands of dollars from writing these books.
You mean they don't live in a big mansion for writing textbooks?
No, they live in homes just like we do.
Oh, poor academics.
So because of the high cost of textbooks, this is what the students say that they've had some of the outcomes. They might not have a textbook, or they might be sharing a book, which causes them to earn a poor grade in a class, 38%. Almost half of students take fewer classes. And when we stop to think about that, right, that kind of dovetails in with the next one, which is not registering for a course. Those two numbers there are close to half, 50%. So what happens is that slows down their progress regarding program completion. So they're having to spend more time here at the institution, one more semester, which adds more and more cost to them and their families.
And we're also starting to see now that we're using a lot more classes with OERs, our students can afford to pick up an extra class a semester and they finish faster.
Yeah, which is, I mean, so when you move to OERs, you start to pick up more and more benefits that you really weren't aware of. So that next one with dropping a course. So say, for example, a student doesn't have a book and the instructor calls on the student to maybe do problem number 3 on page 170, and the student doesn't have a book and is embarrassed or ashamed about not being able to afford a book. So that student drops the class. And then, of course, failure regarding not have a book, because it's really hard to study if you don't have a book. So when we talk about OERs, it's not only about saving money, although that's one of the main things that drives the bus. It really helps students complete programs faster, take more classes, and believe it or not, it helps with retention and bumping up those grades. So there's so many different reasons to shift to OER.
Let me ask you a question. All your classes are OER, correct?
Yes.
Do your English classes fill up before someone that uses a regular textbook?
When I first started this, the other instructors here had books that you had to go to the bookstore and, drop a couple Benjamin Franklin's there. And on the first day class, I would show the students, hey, this is the course handbook. It cost $1 and maybe like 20 cents, and you can get it from the bookstore, and you can take that book back. And boy, I didn't know it, but when word got out and students talk, my classes really filled up quick. And then word started to spread about this.
And one thing we're working on possibly for the spring semester is when we start registration, we hope to have a list of classes that are completely all OER that students can look at. And Mark and I are kind of working together to maybe identify 1 or 2 of our programs within the AA system that we can call a 0 textbook and have like a 0 degree, where students can get their associates and never have to buy a textbook. Everything would be OER.
Yeah, but so on this slide, you can see that more than half of the students here report that they didn't buy a book because it was too expensive. And of course, almost 100% of students are worried that not having a book it's going to have a negative impact on their grade, which of course is true, because that textbook is one of the primary learning resources for students.
Okay, quick question. Let's say a student can't afford the newest version of the textbook, so they buy one that's 2 or 3 versions older. Mm-hmm. Is that worse than not having a textbook?
That's better than not having a book.
Okay.
I mean, anything's better than not having a book. But of course, when you get a student who comes in with the previous edition of a book, the pagination is going to be out of whack. The chapters are going to be shuffled. The questions are going to be it just doesn't work as well as a lot of people think. Okay. Now, so far, what we've been talking about is cost regarding using an OER, but there's a lot more things we need to think about regarding OER. Second point, no need to wait to teach. Before I started moving to OERs, the first day you go over the syllabus, you get them familiar with using the LMS, introductions, orientation to the class, to the college, all those different things, but you really can't start teaching because nobody has the book. And I can remember having to make handouts back when, before it started using OERs, because a lot of students, their financial aid might get held up, and it might be before week 2 that they're able to go and get a book. But with an OER, what you do is that you have it saved as a PDF file, and then you drop it into your LMS. And then the first day when you're going over the LMS, you say, everybody get out your phone, take out your tablet, power up your laptop, and then you show them how to access the book. And so the first day of class, what you can do is you can start teaching. And a lot of people say, oh, well, there's a lot of time in the semester. But as an instructor, I can remember many, many, many times I'd be at the end of the semester and I'd say, gosh, if I just had one or two more classes, we could have covered more information or gone back and reviewed. But that time that you need at the end is burned at the beginning because you're waiting for students to get the book. Rod mentioned just a few moments ago about the new edition, getting that textbook updated. With OERs, you don't need to do that. A lot of people say, well, why do I not need to wait for an update? Say, for example, with the storming of the Capitol back in January. All that you would have to do is you could get your OER, turn it into a Word doc, and then what you could do, say, for example, you're an American history teacher, you could put that content in yourself. That's what it means to be, open educational resources, because after all, these textbook publishers, they're not any different than we are. They have the same degrees, they have publications. We've got publications, we've got degrees, we've got credentials, they've got credentials. I mean, we're the same. So then you can update the content yourself, save it back as a PDF, and chunk it back into your LMS. So you don't need to wait from people in New York City to send you books to teach from. This is a good one. You can personalize an OER. I was at a conference one time on OERs, and there was a math instructor, and she was talking about how she was using an OER to teach geometry. And what she did, she went around the campus and took pictures of different buildings and groups of students. She took snapshots from Google Maps of the campus and dropped them into the book. And so they were doing geometry problems using her college campus. And the students thought that was the coolest thing in the world, to see their buildings and see people they know, or maybe even see themselves in their textbook, see the town laid out on a grid, and to do geometry that way. And she said that it was surprising how the students loved it. So you can make an OER personalized for you, your class, as well as your campus. If you've ever had a student come up to you after class and everybody's gone and say, hey, I read the 2 chapters that you went over today, and after I read them last night, I really didn't understand what was going on in those chapters, right? And we've all had that happen. So here we have students spending $200, $300 for textbooks, and they're going through and reading them, and they're really struggling them. If that happens to you, then what you can do is you can find an OER, or you can even make your own, and you can make it accessible to your students with that writing style. Because a lot of textbook authors, they really tend to be pretentious at times, which really, it happens.
No, never.
And if you think about it, that's really not the purpose of communication. The purpose of communication is to get an idea from one person's mind to another, especially with written communication, through writing. And if that doesn't happen, then we have some bad communication going on. So you can make your course, your textbook, more accessible by going to OER.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
Who knows more about your students, you or somebody writing in New York City?
Me. I've been teaching here at NETC for almost 25 years now, and I'm very, very familiar with our students' strengths and weaknesses. And so when you have all this knowledge, right, that all goes in to...
Let's not be pretentious.
That all goes into making your OER tailored to your students, which is really what education's all about.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about how we got where we are. And currently, I do believe we are leading the way in the South Carolina Technical College system for OERs. So let's talk about OERs at Northeastern. I arrived on the scene in 2018 in September as an interim librarian. And I'm actually from Sherrall, and a lot of people would never believe I'm from Sherrall, but I am. And I was looking around thinking, what would be something that our students need that we're not doing? So I had just finished graduate school at USC and I knew how expensive textbooks were. So I walked over to the bookstore one day and just picked up a random book, and it was an art history book. It was $350. And being from this area, I knew that our students couldn't afford it. So I decided that I was going to start looking at ways to help our students reduce their textbook costs. So I started kind of sending out surveys, asking faculty, do you know what OERs are? Have you used them? Would you use them? I got one response, and it was this guy.
It was me.
It was Mark. And that kind of to the chagrin of our administration, this is when the OER duo was born. I'm going to let Mark talk about how he did OERs before I got here.
Yeah, so if you remember, Ron said that he got here at
2018.
2018. 2 years before that, on my own, I really accidentally discovered open educational resources. If you'll see that one word cloud, where it's like writing and research and all that, that's the cover to my English 101 handbook. For years, I'd found myself having to generate handout after handout because the textbook we were using at that time, which was From Idea to Essay, it wasn't meeting the needs of our students. And I knew that because if it was meeting the needs of our students, I wouldn't have to make handouts. So I'd been doing this semester after semester. And then at the beginning of the semester, I was like, wow, I have almost 40 pages of supplementary handouts. And then it hit me. I was like, why am I making students buy a book when I'm really close to writing a book myself? So that semester, what I did, I bit the bullet and I just kept designing more and more supplementary materials. And then I took those 40 pages and really fleshed it out and just really did a lot of hard work, to be honest. And I made the handbook. It was a ballpark about 100 pages. I had it printed and bound in the print shop and sold at cost at the bookstore for about $1.20, right? Of course, you can't make money. You can't charge for profit. You can only charge for cost. So that's when I accidentally discovered OER. So then I just started, reading and learning more about that. And then I came upon the term open educational resources and OERs. And I was like, let me just do some looking around. And that's when you'll see on to the right, where it says Compact Anthology of World Literature. I stumbled upon OERs out there free. And I did some more digging, and I learned how you can take an OER. And I'll share how to do this with you later in the presentation. I'm sorry, is there a question?
I think we're good.
Okay.
Continue.
So, yeah, I've learned how you can take an OER and take it from a PDF, and you can go in there and change it. So that's when I took this compact anthology of world literature too. Oof,
that's a mouthful.
That's a mouthful. And that book was over 800 pages. So what I did, I went through it and deleted all the selections that I wasn't covering in my class, and then saved changes. I went from 800 to about 350, and then saved it as a PDF, dropped it into the LMS, and told the students, if you want to print this out, you can. If you just want to pull up on your tablet or your laptop and read from there, that's fine, whatever you want to do. And then because of that, I was able to list myself on the title page. And when the student saw my name right on the title page of a textbook and their college listed, they thought it was the most amazing thing. So if your school is moving towards OERs or it doesn't have OERs at all, I highly recommend starting with your English department with the 200 level survey literature. I'll say that again. Start with your English department, 200 level survey literature, American Lit 1 and 2, English Lit 1 and 2, World Lit 1 and 2, because that stuff is in the public domain. Excuse me. And by public domain, Say, for example, Chaucer. He's not making any money off the Canterbury Tales.
Please don't read them.
Shakespeare, same thing. Even Robert Frost is now in the public domain, and The Great
That's
Gatsby,
being one of our favorites.
yeah, is even in the public domain. So here's the thing: if it's in the public domain, it's free. You can't, you can take it and format it on a document and put in your LMS, or you can have it print in your print shop at cost. You can't charge for this stuff, but it can be done at cost. So I highly recommend that's how you get your OER initiative started, because it's the easiest.
Okay, and then I came on board in 2018. I kind of already covered this. I did the survey. I had kind of a introduction to OERs. I had Pascal to send some people and talk to us. And like we said, this wonderful photo of us with our matching shirts on. 2018 is when the OER dynamic duo was born. And we've kind of been inseparable ever since. So in 2019, I thought, how can I really kick this off? And I've been here a little over 8 months, and I knew one thing about my faculty: they are competitive. They will kill each other playing bingo. They will fight over 50-cent prizes. So I thought, okay, I need to get one person onto the Pascal Professor of Affordable Learning list, and I chose Mark.
And that was, if you remember, at the beginning of the presentation, when someone on your faculty earns an award for being Professor of Affordable Learning, right? That faculty member gets a plaque to put up in the office. You get a little sticker that you can put on your Prius, like it's on my Prius. And as well, you're able to put that on your emails, like a little tag.
We teach an effective teaching class, and our next thing to do with Professor of Affordable Learning, I've created a badge within D2L, and the instructors that are PAL, they get the badge in their classes.
Oh, cool.
So it's gonna be kind of cool. But I found, with this bunch of people I've worked with, they're competitive. Let's make it a competition. So once Mark got it, there was a line of other people that had been using OERs. They wanted to join. And there was another huge group that thought, I'm going to do this too. So we had a lot going on. And then Mark and I started doing workshops on how to select OERs. I started learning about Creative Commons. And so 2020, let's talk about January 2020. We had this great event, January, February, planning events, doing workshops. March 2020, seems like a lifetime ago. Open Education Week, we had a campus huddle. And I came up with this wonderful idea. Let's put this great big poster on the wall with all of these thought bubbles with the prompt. If I didn't have to buy textbooks, I would buy ... And I even thought I was crazy for this. I thought, they're going to put off the wall stuff like Nintendo, the new iPhone, designer shoes, laptops. We were very surprised. They put things like clothing, rent,
Childcare.
Childcare was a big food.
Yeah.
Gas to get to school. I think somebody put, I would help my elderly parents. But it was things that we probably never thought about they would put, because I honestly thought they would put very superficial things, but it really opened my eyes and a lot of other instructors who are dead set against OERs to realize that we really are handicapping our students. And it was really interesting because they really enjoy doing this, and they like to tell us to look at it. And it was interesting what they put, and this went on until about March 6th, 7th, 8th, and then what happened? COVID hit.
Yeah.
And we thought, COVID is going to mess everything up, and I'm gonna let Mark take it over.
Luckily, here at Northeastern, a lot of our classes, we teach not only traditional format face-to-face, but we also have online offerings. So we were able to take those traditional face-to-face classes and just shift them into being online classes, since we had all that content and those shells already generated. So we were really ahead of the curve with that.
And we have to give a huge shout out to our D2L administrator, Dirk Reichers. He is amazing at what he does, and he really helped all of our instructors move online quickly.
Yeah. So now here's the thing. With the pandemic, it really drove home the point about how important it is with OERs. because we were closed down just like y'all were, and your bookstores were closed too. How are the students going to get the books? How, right? Since they're PDFs, you just drop them in your LMS, the students have the books. You don't have to worry about how are we going to get the students the books. How are will they be able to afford to buy them from Amazon, since they can't use their financial aid to pay for books like they can in our college bookstore? So, boy, it just really, really made things so easy for us here.
And during the pandemic, Mark and I did a lot of workshops, webinars, and I was still going to school, still in grad school, working full time. And I thought, I just don't have enough to do. I'm bored. No one in academics ever said that, but I decided that I wanted to go and get certified in Creative Commons. So during COVID, I went out and became Creative Commons certified, which has really helped myself and our instructors. So even today, 2021, we're moving ahead. We're working on OERs, and Mark, Dirk, and I are looking at open pedagogy and way to kind of flip classrooms and really make OERs work. But our students are really loving OERs. Our instructors are coming around. And I will say that Dr. Wagner, our president, has always been behind OERs.
Yes.
He's always supported what we've done. And most of the times he would say, why don't you push just a little bit harder and see what you can get done? I must say that if you have an administration that's behind you, it makes all the difference.
It really does.
And let's stop for 1 second and say that if you're starting an OER initiative, if you have one going, Mark and I are always an email or a phone call away. We're more than happy to come to your campus.
Yeah, we're happy to come. Buy us lunch.
Yep, that's true. Okay, I'm gonna turn it to Mark because this is his specialty.
Yeah, so as Ron said, we started to do more and more workshops and sessions with faculty about how to build OERs and how to use Creative Commons. All right, these are some of the different licenses for Creative Commons. A lot of people say, what's Creative Commons? It's a way for you to go in and copyright material, as opposed to sending off for publication and getting rejected and going through all that before you finally get it accepted and published and then copyright. So these are the different Creative Commons licenses. I'm not going to go through and read all that. You can do that yourself. I always tell people as you're going through, and if you're interested in building your own book from different resources out there, you want to look at the top 4 Creative Commons licenses. The bottom 2 you can use, right? But you're not allowed to get in there and remix and rebuild and cut and paste like you are for the top 4. So all of these are free books that you're able to use. But if you're interested, and say if we're taking chapter 1, 3, 4, and 6 from one book, and then chapters 2, 7 from another, and then joining them together to make one book, then you need to stick with the top 4 licenses with Creative Commons.
And I will say this bottom one on CC, BY, NC, ND is very restricted.
Yeah.
This is almost regular copyright.
Yeah.
If you see something with this one, you pretty much really can't do anything with it.
You're able to use it as is, and that's it.
Basically, all you can do is use it and say, I borrowed this. And
yeah.
Stay away from that one.
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, I teach English as well as religion. For example, you want to make one religion text. See what we see here, we see East and West. And you say, okay, well, gosh, I want to take those 2 textbooks and put them together instead of having 2 different textbooks to work with, just one. So what I did, I found these textbooks on an OER repository. I downloaded the PDFs and then I saved them to my desktop. I right-clicked on the PDF, and then you're going to get a little window to pop up. And then I went to open with, and I chose, you want to go down and open with Microsoft Word, MS Word. And then what's going to happen is that Microsoft Word is going to take that PDF and convert it to a Word doc. what this is called ripping into Word. And it's going to take a while because these books are hundreds of pages long. But you'll notice here on this screenshot, this is Microsoft Word. We can see that. So this is what it's going to look like after you take a book and you rip it from a PDF into a Word doc. Then what you want to do is be sure to go in and check the licensing information. A wonderful thing about the authors who are involved with OER is they want you to use their work, and they tell you how to do it and how to cite it. Like these two textbooks here, they both say how to cite the work. So that's why that's highlighted. Always be sure to check the license. Remember the things to stay away from that you can't do this. If you see an equal sign or ND, then those are the ones to stay away from, but everything else is good to roll. Okay, in this series of screenshots here, what to the left, I highlighted content from one book that I wanted from that. So then I copy right to the clipboard, Control C. Then I jump to the other textbook, and then wherever I want those pages, that content to be, I click and then paste, Control V. And it's as simple as copy paste when you're building a book with OER. You'll notice to the right circled in red, that's attribution. You have to be sure to follow licensing directions with Creative Commons and give credit as you go. And of course, when you do this, it may throw off, depending upon the pagination, how that's working in Word. So you may need to make changes to the table of contents, or you may not.
And I will say, if you have any questions about copyright, see your local campus librarian.
Yeah, they're very, very helpful.
We're usually all really good with copyright information.
Okay, some quick tips with creating an OER from two or more PDFs. You want to spend the bulk of your time reviewing the textbooks. Don't just randomly grab one and start working with it. If you start with quality material, you might not have to do that much with it. That second bullet point, as you're converting from PDF to Word, remember these files are huge. They're huge. They're huge. Close Outlook, close, Google, close Chrome, get everything shut down so your machine is just working on that. As you're going along and you're making changes, rename and save. Anytime you make a change, copy paste, save as. You want to be sure to do that. And you got to be patient because your PC is going to run slow. And we can take the word may crash out because it's going to crash. It happens to me quite frequently. And then you say your favorite cuss word and you power it back on and then you go about your business.
And let me add something as an information professional. Back up your OERs you're creating in more places than just your laptop.
Yeah, use the cloud.
Use the cloud, use a thumb drive, use an external hard drive.
Yeah.
Make sure you're putting, because you don't want to do all this work on a book and then oops, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's only one copy saved.
And excuse me, I'm currently working on a textbook for Religion 101, an introduction to religion. And that textbook is in 2 different clouds because I've been working on it for almost, over a year now. And I don't want to lose all that work. So be sure to back it up, put it in the cloud, 2 different places. Always follow licensing. Always follow licensing.
Okay, and like we said, my name is Ron.
And I'm Mark.
And we're always willing and glad to help you. OERs have kind of become our passion and something we spend a lot of time talking about. And do we have any questions from the audience? I see that Chuck said that he used the same literature anthology book.
Really, Chuck? What, from idea to essay?
The World Lit one.
Yeah, where it's like 800 pages.
Yeah, and I mean, and that's, yeah, and I use it for World One too. I mean, it's just, I made the mistake of printing it once.
Oh no!
At the print shop, and it came back, and I had to use 3 giant binders for it. So I had to definitely go through there and cut it up and everything else. So yeah, but I mean.
And I will tell you that as somebody that the print shop is under me, we don't like printing that for you either.
Oh, But now, Chuck, how many of those pages did you end up throwing in the trash because you didn't use them?
I actually am pretty bad about the fact that I still have them on the shelf because I refuse to throw that many pages in the trash can. So I just took out what I use and then put all the rest as, quote unquote reserves back in the bag.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh.
My suggestion would be, if you don't want to throw the papers away, take them to your local elementary school for paper mache.
There you go.
Repurpose them.
Oh, yeah, but I mean, that's a perfect example. I'm sure everybody can remember, when we were in school, we had to buy the Norton anthologies that were, 1,000 pages. And
Like this.
and I mean, oh my goodness. And they would come out with new editions from work that had been, in public domain for hundreds of years. And I had no idea that how just wasteful and I mean, just that wrong it is to do that.
Chuck, do your students like your OERs better than the paper books?
So I always do a feedback discussion board
Mhm.
post at the end of it all. And I get back that some of them miss having books, but if they had to make the choice, pay for the book or use the OER, they prefer the OER. I've actually seen better success rates as well in the classes that use the OER because many of them say, because especially like that book, it can be PDF, so they can open it on their phones, open it anywhere. They don't have to carry the book around with them. And if they're just sitting around somewhere waiting for something, they can pull it up. And I actually have better discussion responses, better grades, everything else. And I think it's because they actually read. One, they're not buying the book. And two, they're actually, accessing it whenever they can. So I found success with it. And I'm in the English department. So
Yeah, and the English department survey lit is the place to start. And that's so cool, Chuck, that you kind of stumbled upon that yourself.
Okay, English boys, I think Tracy's got a question.
Yeah, I'm muted to let you know.
I had to make him shut up,
So
I'm sorry.
I'm on the opposite end in the gen ed. I am in math, and
Okay.
the whole 3-hole punch book thing just irritates me so much.
Oh, no. Isn't it terrible?
Well, not only that though, most students are already using e-text. So I'm thinking, why? Because it's cheaper. But they get hung up in the view an example and the software. And I go through all of their scratch work already. And I'm thinking, I could do this in D2L, and it's just going to be the adjustment of them getting used to not having the software, the extra push. So I think my office hours will be a little busier. But I do have some plans on how they can show that they're learning with some problems and some little projects and things. And so I'm implementing this in the fall. And so it's great to hear what y'all are doing at your school. It really piqued my interest to think about the whole school-wide initiative. I think that's really it. But math has not changed. I mean, let's face it. So we don't have to.
And that's what Mark and I always say, English and math, but history rarely changes. You just add to it.
Yeah.
So the Gen X things are always the best ones to start with.
And it's funny, Tracy, that you said math, because I can remember one day I was waiting in line to use the copier and the math instructor was in front of me and he was printing out and, had the staple thing going and he was printing out like a little packet that was maybe like 15, 20 pages long. And I was like, is this a test? And he was like, no, my students need some more help. So I was like, well, what about your book? And he said, well, we did all the pages in the book and the exercises in the book, so I have to do more. And I said, do you know what you're doing? You're making your own book. I said, so why are you making your students buy a book when you're making a book?
Yeah, and I think that the freedom of bringing our own personality and the engagement will really benefit students for sure.
Casey, have you looked for math OERs yet?
Oh yeah, I've been working with, I'm not sure if you know Laura Baker. She's been very active at our library. And I did a review. I got a grant to, Laura has a grant that she's managing where faculty can actually go through that and review books. And so I picked one, but it is one of those bottom two where I have to use it whole,
Right.
So earlier today at Exceeds, there was another English person talking about different chapters and how she kind of stumbled through it. That was really helpful because for elementary calculus, there really isn't a good text. It's pretty much you take the regular Calc 1, and I'm going to need to do that. I teach that every semester, and so I'm definitely going to want to do that.
You may be able to, I know our math instructor has found a lot of supplementary math things, test banks, exercises, and I think he even found some free online math labs, this OER. He found some
Nice.
cool things through MIT. And we put our
Okay.
email addresses in the text box. If you need us, we're always here to help.
Yeah, just let us know.
And we're glad you dropped in. I'm glad I made the English guy shut up so you can talk.
I'm learning so much though.
We're in the bad thing, we're always like this 24/7. We're always, yeah.
Oh.
People hate to see us coming some days, but we're here.
All
Well, thank you
right.
for joining us, and we're glad
Yeah.
we could help you.
And I think we're at the end of our time.
We are at the end of our time.
So we're going to
Aw.
pass it on. Thanks again, everybody,
Thanks,
for
everybody.
coming, whether you're live or you're viewing the recording. Thanks. And we hope that you jump into the OER revolution.
And don't forget, OERs are for the cool kids.
That's right.
All right, thanks, everybody.
All right.